Welcome, everyone, to the Creative Spirit podcast, where we celebrate how God's creative spirit works through Catholic and Catholic-friendly businesses. My name is Will Dethridge. I'm the CEO of Catholics for Hire, and we actually designed our guest's website. Our guest, of course, is Steve Ray. Thanks for coming on the show, Steve.
You're welcome. Always glad to work with you, William. You did a great job on my website, actually, both of them. And for other websites, I know you're doing also for my son and others. Nice job. A lot less expensive than the other ones I've used and a lot quicker. So thanks for that.
That's what we strive to do. No, thanks, Steve. And, you're one of our first partners ever, and we really appreciate that, especially around this time of Thanksgiving and all. We're grateful not just for, all the work you've done with us, but the work you do with everyone, which brings us to, our first question. I know you've got a large history that we're going to go over as far as being an entrepreneur, but could you explain for the audience who might not know what you do right now, what ministries you run, and then we'll go into how you got to where you are today.
Well, I'm glad we have 2 hours. Yeah. Well, right now I lead pilgrimages. That's one of the main things we do. We do 10 pilgrimages a year to all Catholic and biblical sites. That's called footprintsofgod.com. I also have a writing and speaking ministry. My new book is coming out next year, a commentary on Genesis, published by Ignatius Press. And that is called Crossing the Tiber Productions. That's my speaking. I've got 4 speaking engagements in the next 2 weeks all around the country. That's called Crossing the Tiber Productions. And I have another company called St. Joseph Productions, where we do documentaries and we produce movies, which we filmed on site in about 15, 16 countries, the whole story of the Bible from Abraham to Augustine. We filmed Abraham, for example, in Iraq and Turkey and Israel and Palestinian areas. And so for the last 20 years, we've been making documentaries and filming them all over the world. So that's St. Joseph Productions. There's probably more, but I don't remember them right off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, no, you do so much work, which is fantastic. But for the audience who doesn't know, you haven't always been Catholic, and you haven't always been an entrepreneur. So could you tell us how you got your start in running a business and your faith journey along the way?
Well, you're correct on one of those. I wasn't always a Catholic, but you're incorrect that I wasn't always an entrepreneur. When I was about 10 years old, if you drove past our house, we had 3 acres out in the country in Plymouth, Michigan. And if you drove by our house in the summer, you'd see 10 booths out in front along the road on our front. One where I was selling eggs. I had a chainsaw, so I went out and cut firewood. I was selling cords of wood.
Wow.
I had pony rides for sale. We sold honey because I raised honeybees. We also sold vegetables because I did all of that. And there was about 10 different booths along the front of my house where I was selling things.
Wow.
My mom said that I never slept in the morning. I was always up early and I never stopped doing things. So even since I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, I was always an entrepreneur. And I love to come up with ways to make money. Oh, another thing, I used to go out in the woods and dig up these little maple trees. I put them on our little tractor. I had a wagon, and I would drive around subdivisions that were near our house, and I would offer to sell a tree for $2.
Oh, wow.
And I would plant the tree, and then I promised to come back every day and water it for $2 a week. And, some of those trees now have trunks this big around that are still alive. So this is what I did when I was a kid, when other people were sitting in front of the television. My dad never got me a television. We had to read books and work. And I had to milk a goat every morning before school and before bed. And that's how we got our milk, from a goat. That's how I grew up. My way of getting fresh milk in the morning was to go out and squirt that right in my mouth. So I was always an entrepreneur, but you were correct that I was not always a Catholic. But my parents love Jesus and they love the Bible, and they raised me that way, to be honest and hardworking. My dad never missed a day at Ford Motor Company. And he was a honest, hard worker and always appreciated his job and said, I love Ford Motor Company and I know they love me. And I said, how do you know they love you, Dad? He says, because every 2 weeks they send me a big check.
I love it. That's great.
So when I was um, probably around 16, 17, 18, I talked to my dad about what I should do when I grew up. See, at 15, I became very rebellious, and it was
Mm,
the sexual revolution of the 60s. I
right.
graduated. You're a young guy. You're like one of my grandkids. Um, but I was graduated in 1973, so I was right in the middle of all of that. And I asked my dad after I decided to be a Christian at 17. I'll just real quickly say that I went out, I heard Billy Graham on the radio, and I went out for a walk on the road, and I was in tears, and I just looked up the stars
Mm.
at 17 with long hair down to here, bell-bottom blue jeans, and I said, Jesus, I'm only 17 years old, but tonight I'm going to give my life to you.
Oh, wow.
And that was the turning point of my life. That was the most important day. You know, when you send a rocket off into space, it has a trajectory.
Yeah.
It has and that was the day I set the trajectory for my
Mm,
life. That I was going to be a Christian, I was going to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. Everything else would be second. That was the
mm,
first. That's how I identified as a disciple of Christ. So if you'd asked me even today, when people come up and say, Steve, what are you? What I say, I'm a Catholic. I don't mean, I mean, what do you do? Oh, I said, what I do is very different from what I am.
mm. Love it.
So when I was 17, that's the day I set the trajectory for my life, or I should say the Lord set the trajectory for my life. And I asked my dad, what should I do? My dad says, don't go to college. It's a waste of time and money. He said, I work at Ford's and I see guys with PhDs rolling barrels around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was terrible advice, absolutely terrible advice. And all of my kids went to college and got their degrees, all homeschooled and all 4.0 in college. But I took my dad's word for it. So when I graduated, I had been cleaning offices with a friend during high school for pocket money on the weekends.
Mm,
So when I graduated, I said, what do I know how to do? Well, I know how to clean offices. So I made homemade business cards. I bought a used vacuum cleaner and a bucket and wringer at a garage sale, and I bought an old Pinto station wagon for $500.
mm,
And I started going door to door to these little businesses. My first one was in a 1 hour Martinizing dry cleaning store. And I said, I will clean your store for $50 a month. I'll come in every weekend. You give me a key. At the end of the month, I'll send you an invoice. You can send me a check. They said, it's a deal.
mm.
So I started adding these, and over time, I built it up to $12 million a year, and 600 employees. I had a union and a non-union and a minority division.
Mm.
And I did all of that, started from the dining room of our house. My wife and I, she took care of the paperwork. I took care of the out on the field work. And we built it up to a big business.
Wow.
It was a big business doing 12 million plus dollars a year, and it was growing 30% a year. But then I became Catholic and I lost interest in that business.
Mm.
You can't have two loves in your life.
Right.
And the new love, I published a book. I made our first movie. And the next thing I knew, I just couldn't do that business anymore. And I sold it so that I could do what I do now, serving the Lord in the Catholic Church and making movies, leading pilgrimage, writing books, giving conferences, and so on.
Right.
So that's kind of the background all the way from 10 years old until a little bit up to
Yeah.
modern times.
That's perfect. And for those who might be interested in hearing more about your conversion story proper, I'll actually link to another interview series that we had on another channel that I run, Clarifying Catholicism, so people can get more background about the religious conversion to Catholicism there. Well, so yeah, clearly I was wrong. You've always been an entrepreneur, but that's awesome though that your parents instilled a great work ethic into you. I mean that's something. It's so easy to get distracted by a lot of the media and technology that we have around us. It's easy to kind of just zone out and turn off the hardworking part of your brain like that, right? So
Yeah.
what do you
Let
think?
me tell you one other quick thing about my dad.
Sure.
He never had a promotion at Ford Motor Company, and I learned a lot from him. He
Mm,
never had a promotion. And when I got older, I said, Dad, you worked at Ford Motor Company for 35 years and you were a great employee. You never missed a day. why didn't you ever get promoted? Why didn't we have more money? Because we never had a lot of money. We had what we needed, but I never knew what a steak was until after I got married with my wife. We never went on vacations except driving up north in Michigan or something. But my dad says, well, Steve, they often called me into Ford Motor Company and asked to give me promotions. He said, but I have a question. I asked them, will I have to work weekends and evenings with this promotion?
Yeah.
And they said, of course, comes with the extra pay. My dad always said to them, well, I'm very sorry, then I have to turn you down because I have 3 boys at home that need me more than Henry Ford does. And my dad gave me that example of not only that he worked hard and he was very faithful to his job, but he always put his family first. And so we did the same thing in our life. Even though I was an entrepreneur, we homeschooled our kids and I taught them the same. Since they homeschooled, each one of them after 12 years old had to spend 1 day a week working in our business. And I stopped buying them anything at 12, 13 years old. If they wanted new shoes, clothes, anything, they had to buy it themselves. I made sure they had a lot of money because I paid them well to work for us. But I also made each kid get a credit card and a checking account at 16 years old. They had to use their credit card for everything and pay it off at the end of the month, and we monitored it. By the time our kids were 23, 24, 26, they were all married. And every single one of them bought a house with their own signature without any help from us because they had built good credit. And I taught them how to work and earn money and the value of money. So it can be done. It's a mom and dad's job. Specifically, it's a dad's job.
Yeah. Well, and it's something that gets so lost, anymore, especially with dual income households. You lose both the father and the mother completely to work. Just stick them in a daycare or something like that. So, your father was wise and you were wise taking the route of putting fatherhood as the most important job, of them all. Right.
And my mom stayed home with us. I always knew when I came home from school, we were going to have cookies and milk and we were going to have dinner at 5 and dad would be home by 5 o'clock for dinner. And then in the evening, no televisions. He would read stories to us, tell us stories and sing gospel hymns to us. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross. I heard that every night before I went to bed as dad prayed with us. And the result was me. And then the result was my kids and my 19 grandkids who all are living the same way. So it can be done.
Well, it's hard enough to balance work and home life, and it's hard enough to start your own business, as we both know for sure. But it's sometimes even harder to start a Catholic business, right? So, could you speak more about what it was like transitioning from a more secular style of business to creating a ministry that's one of the most popular Catholic pilgrimage services in the world right now?
Well, I never went from secular because as an evangelical Protestant, that was the center of our life too. And so when I was an evangelical, I started our business and I started it on Christian principles. Now, I didn't know all of the things about Catholicism, of course, but we let all of our employees know that we're going to have great integrity. We're going to have honesty. We're going to conduct ourselves as a Christian company. And I made no bones about it. And when I became Catholic, one of the first things I did is put up a big crucifix in our lobby.
Awesome.
And I said, this will be the motto of our company. And I had a guy come in one time. He wanted to be the HR manager. He says, I don't like that cross. And I said, then you don't need to work here.
Nice. I love it.
And this is a funny thing. People think it's rather strange, but I would go in to do a bid on a job. And I had one account that was $4 million a year. But we would go into, I'd prepare our proposal and I'd bring my team with me as a big account and I would present the proposal and they would say to me, we're interviewing 5 companies. You're one of them. Why should we hire you instead of the other 4? And I would say, because I'm a Catholic. And then I would just stop and leave a pregnant pause. And they would say, well, what does that matter? I said, why that matters is because you're not my boss. He's my boss. I work for him primarily. And if I'm working for him primarily, I'm going to do a darn good job for you.
Yeah.
And we're going to be honest. We're going to have integrity. Yeah. And I will be accountable to you, but I'm more accountable to him. And you have no idea how many jobs I got because of that.
Mm. Oh, no, that's great. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there and people out there that, they'll have Catholic in the title, but it'll be a Catholic in name only, deal. The only time you'll ever hear them talk about the faith is just, in their name, right? Or maybe in a mission statement or something
I've
like that.
always worn this. Everybody knows where I come from.
Yep.
And stuff, so you can see it better here. But
Yeah.
I people a lot of people comment on it, and I said I just want the world to know not only what I believe, but what I know is true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No.
And that's the center of my life. My life does not center around my business. It centers first and primary that I'm a Catholic Christian. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. Everything else flows from that. Then the next most important thing is I'm a husband, a father, and a grandfather. That's the second most important thing. How I make money is something very different. How I
Right.
make money, the business end, is important. I'm responsible as a father to go out and make a living. And there were times when I was starting building my business where I worked 100 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my wife and I talked and prayed about it. We said, in order to establish it and get going, we're going to have to pay the price. We're going to have to, bear the stripes, so to speak. And so there were several years where I worked 100 hours a week and got very little sleep, but I still made time for my kids every day. And I did most of the work out of my house so that they saw me working and they knew what I
Mm.
was doing. And I worked at night a lot of the times and did the sales and the paperwork during the day. So there's a price to pay to be an entrepreneur. In a
Right.
way, it's simpler to become an employee, to
Mm.
work for somebody else 8
Yep.
hours a day, get days off, because I never had days off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never had anybody paying for my insurance. I had to
Yeah.
work hard to get all of that. But the rewards are also immense.
Mm-hmm.
The dangers are also very real.
Yeah.
But the rewards are very real. Now that I'm 68 years old and I'm kind of sitting back and enjoying all that we've done and all that we're doing, and seeing our kids and grandkids follow in our stead, having run my own business. I've never worked for anybody else. I can put it that way. Ever
Yeah.
since I was a kid, I've never been an employee,
Mm.
except for during high school working for this friend of mine as a janitor. I've never been an
Right.
employee. I've always had my own business and made my own money. So that's because I'm a little bit of a renegade. I just I can never see myself working for someone.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a kid, that's kind of what drove me. I wanted the independence of being my own boss. So
Yeah. Well, I think especially in today's, culture, it's really important to try and foster that independent mindset. We're at the point right now where the largest corporations in this country aren't exactly what you'd call the most ethical or Christian, right? And I know a lot of my friends who are good Catholics and good Christians and good people, who just dread having to go to work or dread having to sign their soul away, because it's not just about going 9 to 5. Now you gotta support whatever the company supports. You gotta, wear the rainbow badge. You gotta do everything that, these corporations tell you. You have to think the way they tell you to think,
and
right?
go to sensitivity training.
Yeah, that's right. No,
I couldn't do it. I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it.
yeah,
But I understand that there are people who are making a living for their families, that they have
yeah,
no other choice, and they are in the situation they're in, and they just have to trust the Lord to make the
yes,
best of it and to be a witness for Christ as they can.
yep,
But there are other times where it gets bad enough where one has to say, as a Catholic Christian, I have to say no, because
yeah,
there is a point where we have to draw the line
hmm,
and we have to say no. I remember one time when I was doing janitorial work and a guy wanted to give me this big account, and I came in to see it. And what he did is sold pornography. And I said,
mm,
sir, what you sell is rubbish. There's no way that I can work for you. I said, I'm sorry, and I turned around and walked out the door. There's
awesome.
times when you say no and you turn away work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the Catholic tradition, we have such a great reverence for the martyrs, right? And if people could die, burnt at the stake, professing the name of Christ, sometimes we might have to let go of a customer or a job or something like that because we have to have those priorities,
Yep.
right? We have to be comfortable with bearing witness to the gospel like that, and it's tough, but it's doable. And people ask me, well, how much do I make? Being like, what's your salary? And I say, well, whatever I put into the company is going to be like I'm the determinant of what my salary is. It's I don't have like a piece of paper that says, all right, this amount of money per year per month. So it's a bit
No, an entrepreneur doesn't have a salary
no,
necessarily.
it's
If you make
intimidating.
$100, if $100 comes into the business, you have to first they pay the taxes
Yep.
and all the supplies and the equipment and the
Yep.
electricity. And out of that $100, if you get $1 or $2, sometimes you're a lucky man.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've already given a bit of advice, but for other young Catholics out there who are looking to start their own businesses, what are the biggest pieces of advice that you could give them? And you know, what you've already talked about a lot about what worked well for you. Is there anything in the past you would have done a little bit differently, you think?
One of the things that people ask me a lot is I would like to be doing a ministry like you do.
Right.
I would like to be an apologist or whatever. And I said, don't quit your day job.
Ha.
In other words, you don't say to your boss on Friday, I'm quitting because I'm going to become a Catholic apologist or I'm going to start my own company. Because then you don't, I learned that you don't walk away from something until you have something else established.
Yes. Yeah.
So education's important, but I don't think that we should automatically be sending all of our kids to liberal arts
I
schools.
agree. I
Some of them
agree.
may should be welders. Some of them should learn how to be builders or
Mhm.
plumbers. And there's a lot of money to be made as builders and plumbers, not
Yeah.
just working for someone else, but I have many friends who have their own businesses doing
Hmm.
welding and plumbing and building and these kind of things, excavating or landscaping, these kind of things. And they're
Yeah.
very good businesses. So first of all, I'd say don't assume that you should just go to college and get a liberal arts degree so that you study um, underwater basket weaving and feminist topics and all these things.
Right.
Really, if you're going to go to college, do things that are going to be practical in your future.
Yes.
And unless you intend, like I have two grandsons right now that are going through liberal arts. One is at Wyoming Catholic and another one at Ave Maria University. Now,
Mhm.
those guys are going to use those degrees. One wants to be an attorney to defend Catholic liberty, and the other one
Good.
wants to probably be a professor or something. So, those are all good things.
Yes.
But not everybody is geared towards that. Some are geared towards manual labor, plumbing, whatever. That's what I did. I did a janitorial company and I made a big success out of it. We're one of the biggest ones in Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would also suggest that if you do want to do something else, if you want to break off on your own or find another job, don't quit the one you have
Right.
until you find the bridge across the river.
Yep.
Because a lot of people have said, "Oh, I'm going to trust God," and then quit, and then they just sink. What I did in mine is I kept my business going. I wrote my first two books. They got published by Ignatius. People started inviting me to come speak. I still kept my business. I had good managers running, so I didn't have to be there every day. I had a good management team. And then we started doing the movies and the pilgrimages. And then it got to the point where I could afford to sell the business and do this other thing because I'd already kind of repositioned myself. And I was doing two things at once, and I couldn't continue to do two things at once
Hmm.
because they were both all consuming. They weren't. I know there's some businesses you may have where you can run to. Well, I do right now. I'm running a pilgrimage company, a movie company, a book writing company, but
Right.
it's don't stop what you're doing until you're established in something else. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, well, I definitely feel that because when I first started Catholics for Hire, I was in graduate school, and I made sure I was at graduate school, and I was also working at the Heritage Foundation as a research assistant, and I made sure to keep both things going, especially graduate school to get the degree, of course, while I built the company. And at a certain point, I left Heritage and didn't have research or didn't have interest in continuing that anymore because the business had grown so much that I only had time for business in grad school. And by the time I graduated with my degree, I was ready to just do this full time, right? So,
And you're a young guy and you've got a lot of talents. I'm kind of curious to watch you as you grow older and develop,
thanks.
because I like guys like you who don't go after the worldly pursuits, but set your mind towards Jesus Christ, the church, and good quality things, and building companies and helping. I love the Catholics for Hire thing, where you're helping other young Catholics who have computer skills and talents, and you're helping them make a living while they're going through school and so on. This is what we should be doing.
I
It's
appreciate
what
it.
you're doing is a great model for other young people.
Oh, thanks. That means a lot. And you mentioned how not everyone needs to go to get a liberal arts style education. And I think case in point, a lot of the people who work for Catholics for Hire, most of them don't have a computer science or graphic design degree. They're mostly in theology, if anything. And they have accumulated all these skills in video production, podcast production, social media management, etc., all from just being active and engaged in promoting the faith in their free time and of their own volition,
Right.
as members of my generation, right? So you should never feel pressured that you have to go to college or have to get this degree. Even for some of the quote technical skilled jobs, you might have needed a degree 20 years ago in computer programming to build a website, but it's not like that anymore. The technology has progressed that far. I mean, your
Guy,
grandson, for
the
example.
guys, yeah, Sam, yeah.
Yeah, he's what, 17 years old, and he's already doing. He's phenomenal. He's taken on so many projects, and he hasn't even gotten to college yet. So it's
He's doing coding with trigonometry, and I don't even know what that
yeah.
means. And then, let's face it, the two guys that started the two biggest computer companies, Microsoft and Apple, I don't think they graduated from college either. They started this thing in their garage. And today there's a lot. Not everybody can do what they did and what
Right.
others have done, but there's a lot of opportunities today as well.
Yeah.
And you just have to. I've learned this, William, is that when I gave my life to the Lord at 17 years old, a verse popped into my mind. I'm not going to say the Lord gave it to me. I don't be presumptuous like that, but it was Matthew 6:33, and that has been my target verse my whole life. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his
Yeah.
righteousness, and I'll do everything else for you. That
Yep.
it says that all these other things will be added to you. But my way, it was like the Lord said to me that night, Steve, if you put me first, if you work towards righteousness and you put me first, I'll take care of everything else. I'll never let you down.
Yeah.
And I have to say that all through the times, even when it was dark and when we had downturns in our businesses, or when I used to wake up at night and think I'm losing everything, he would remind me, remember
Yeah.
back when you were 17? Don't
Hmm.
worry. I'll take care of everything as long as you keep me first. And I've always put him first.
Yeah.
And I married a wife that always puts him first. And
Mm.
she's a great part. Another thing is, when you marry well, marry up.
Yeah.
Marry a girl who wants to be a mother and a wife, someone who loves the Lord
Hmm.
and doesn't have all that feminism, LGBT stuff in her blood. One who wants to be a woman and loves being a woman and a mother, and that's her goal in life, and it'll make your life wonderful.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of girls out there looking for guys like that, and there's a lot of guys out there looking for girls like that. And I'm
Yep.
sure glad I'm not out there looking. I'm glad that I found one, but it is a tough thing for people. And find a good spouse, because a good spouse can make or break you.
Yeah.
And but always put Jesus Christ first, and remember Matthew 6:33. If you do that, then I can rest. I cannot worry at night when I wake up and things, I don't know how things are going. Am I going to get enough money to pay the taxes this
Yeah.
year or whatever? Because the Lord is always, always taking care of us.
Yeah. One thing I do for practice, because I fall into that habitual sin of getting a little bit anxious about things sometimes. I now have like a prayer log where basically I track everything that I've prayed for, and I write the date of when I started praying for it, and when it's been resolved, I cross it off, and I write. I'm like, all right, it just puts things into perspective. Like, gee, remember what I was worried about like 2 years ago for like 5 months? And it ended up all right. And then a similar situation comes up, and it's like, whew.
God's got a track record.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. 100% track record, I think. So, well, no, Steve, you mentioned Last question. You mentioned, one of your key verses to your success in the Bible. Any patron saints or blesseds or figures out there that have particularly inspired you or been a, constant inspiration throughout your journey?
Not really. Because I started out as an evangelical.
Hmm.
I started the whole business thing as an evangelical. And my model, I guess, was my dad, who always, maybe he could be my patron saint, the
Yeah.
Protestant patron saint, but he always was a great example to me of hard work and faithfulness and loyalty to his employer. And he's the one who encouraged me to go out. Of course, we have a lot of saints, of farmers and of workers and of all these things. But I cannot say, and I'll get fired as a Catholic for this, but
No.
I've never really thought in the terms of having a model of hard work. It was just, I always knew what I was supposed to do and what I had to do, and I've done it.
Right.
And as I have grown in being a Catholic, of course, there are many models of saints. But there's Saint Januarius, who actually is a patron saint of janitors,
Ha,
and he has eyes behind and in front, so he can see everything.
I love it.
But I really can't say that there was any one saint that stood
Sure.
out to me in regards to starting and running my business.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. And but the fact that you have, verses that are special to you, we mentioned this on our other podcast when we talked about your conversion story. More Catholics need to get well versed in scripture. It's it's the word of
Yep.
God,
Yep.
plain and simple, So we got to keep that going for sure. Well, Steve, this has been fantastic. We're really grateful for you coming on the show, and we're grateful for supporting Catholics for Hire, and everything that you've done on pilgrimages and your various ventures, and being a great example of what it means to be a Christian and a Catholic business person and an entrepreneur. So thanks for everything you've done.
So my website's catholicconvert.com. And if you go there and put in the search engine convert story or something, I have whole story of my life with pictures and
Yes.
me with my first buffing machine and vacuums, all this stuff. But my kids, they have no idea what I went through to get them through.
Mm,
Kids never really appreciate all that their parents did, but I know my kids do. But they don't realize all the nights I was out working without any sleep and things. But that's what it takes to build a business, and
yeah.
put God first and go for it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Steve, and we'll link to everything in the description. And for those who are interested, Catholics for Hire, we do digital marketing for Catholic organizations across the country. We build websites, videos, podcasts, graphics, social media. If it's digital and Catholic or Catholic friendly, we do it. So feel free to check out our website as well. And thanks, Steve, for coming on. And thanks, everyone, for watching the first episode of the Creative Spirit podcast. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone, and God bless you.
Thank you.